All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to March 2024 edition of our live monthly Q&A. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand or you can put them in the chat. If you put them in the chat, then my co-host will grab those and answer and ask those questions on your behalf. So let me go ahead and bring on my co-host. Hello, how are you, Mom?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing good. What's been going on your side?
Well, if you hear some weird noises, the neighbor across the street is doing yard work and the neighbor behind me is building a new garden shed. So
Okay.
if you hear random noise,
Okay.
that's what's going on. But I wanted to tell you that I really enjoyed listening to the podcast you did with Nikki Roush.
Yep.
On the Sales Maven, on her Sales Maven podcast, creating boundaries that save you time. That's a great topic. That's a great,
Yeah, thank you. So for those of you who, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, so I hired a sales coach named Nikki Roush. She's also known as the Sales Maven. And I hired her, I want to say back in September, October, I think. And she has group coaching. She has private one-on-one coaching. I mean, very similar kind of model to what I do. And she was actually running a member appreciation month. And so she gave all of us different activities that we could do to earn points to apply to some of her different services. And one of them was actually to do her podcast. So she invited us. We had to, if we signed up to do a podcast, we got, I think, 75 points. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And yeah, so I signed up and she was doing, I think, student spotlight or student success stories or something like that. And so I got a chance to chat with her. And one of the things that she's really helped me with, and it's something I'll talk about more when we get to the Q&A, because it's related to a question that we got. But one of the things that she's really helped me with is figuring out basically how to tell people no, politely declining things, or maybe even having a slightly more, I wouldn't call it a difficult conversation, but maybe something that is asserting a boundary. And those can just be hard. I think those are hard for pretty much everybody. So she really helped me with that. So that's what we talked about. So was there anything in particular that you liked about the
well, just the fact that you are able to create those boundaries to save you time. Yeah, that's always been very difficult for me to do. So I learned quite a bit about how it's not the end of the world if you say no, and how you can structure your time so it actually belongs to you when you need it to belong to you.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, great. Well, thank you for that. And you can take yourself off camera because I know you prefer not to be on the camera. So okay, everybody. So for today, I'm going to just go over a couple of things that we put in the in the accelerator, just draw your attention to some new pieces of content that we've added. And then if anybody has questions, comes on and has questions, happy to answer them. If not, I've got the list of questions that were a roundup from things that you all submitted since our last time. So I will go over those. So before I do that, let me just, let me share my screen and we can go over some stuff that we put into the okay. So since last time, let's see, I've added a couple of things. First of all, I added the replay from our last show. So you can see that there. You've got the video. I talk about the new content, and then I answered several 3 questions that you all had. How can I balance being authentic in my networking? A friend just got promoted. How do I support them? And how do I tell my boss that I have too much work without seeming like I'm a complainer? So you can grab those anytime. The next thing I shared was a personal anecdote along with a little bit of a workbook about how I learned to keep my composure in tough situations. And so this comes up a lot, and it's really interesting because this is a gender neutral. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter what your your ethnicity is. It does not matter. Everybody I know struggles with this in some capacity. And so some people feel like they are too passive. They feel like they might get too upset from a like almost ready to cry or something like that standpoint. And then the other extreme is people who get really frustrated and aggressive in tough situations. And so there's this full spectrum of emotional reactions. But the point is, first of all, that it's normal to have emotional reactions. It's okay to have emotional reactions. And this really only becomes a challenge or something that you might need to address if you feel like you are not in control of yourself, if you feel like you're reacting in a way that you then later regret. And so if that is something that you struggle with, regardless of where it is on the spectrum, then I've got a strategy that you can use. I learned this strategy from my coach. I use it all the time. And I teach it to others. And many of you have come back to me and said, you know what, just thinking a little bit through how I'm going to prepare for this tough situation, because 99% of the time I know they're coming. They're not a surprise. It's the same people over and over, or the same situations over and over that really rile me up. But just taking even just a few moments to think about it in advance, put together a strategy for how you're going to handle it, can make a huge difference, mostly for you. I mean, make a huge difference so that you're not leaving these interactions or waking up the next morning like kicking yourself for how you behaved. And other people will notice too. People will notice when you start to be more composed in certain situations. And so this is it. I tell you my specific story about how I realized this was something I needed to work on. Then I give you, kind of a quick little process you can use. And then this is a cheat sheet. So there is a workbook that goes with it. If you want to download the workbook and actually work through it, you absolutely can do that. So that is, that's one piece of content that's been added. The other thing I did just a quick win about performance reviews. So most people don't like them. They're tough. They're emotional situations. And it's one thing to just be anxious, which is, I think normal and people can expect it. But it's another thing to really go through this thing and think, man, that was completely useless. Or now I feel dejected, or, I don't know how to improve. And it can go either way. It can be like you just got to sort of, you keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great. And you're like, but I want to get better because I want to get promoted soon. How can I get better? Or you'll get like, you really missed the mark but maybe it's vague. Okay, well, what do I need to do differently? Oh, well, I don't know, just do a better job. So performance reviews are really known for giving vague feedback and not being useful. And so in this quick win, I talk about what you need to do, one, to set yourself up emotionally to reduce your anxiety, reduce your stress level so that you can emotionally be ready for this exchange. Two, how to bring your best foot forward. So not only just relying on any potential systems or forms or whatever that your organization might use for this process, but coming with your own materials to present, your own talking points, and how to arrange those so that you bring your absolute best foot forward into this meeting. And then the last piece is really about, okay, how do you actually make sure that you can focus on the future, that you can actually get some useful nuggets out of this whole exchange that set you up for whatever it is your own professional goals are and whatever progress you want to make, how you can actually ensure that this meeting helps you to achieve your own personal goals by focusing on the future. So that's what this quick win is about, how to get value out of your next performance review. And then the last thing, and it's actually not a new piece of content, it's an update to something that I put in here before, but I'll just show it to you. And Mom, if you don't mind just making a note in the show notes, I'll make sure that we link back to this. Let's see if I can find it. It is a cheat sheet, the RACI matrix. So this has been in here for a while. There was just a cheat sheet on a RACI matrix. What I have done is I have added a personal story about how not using the RACI matrix cost me $2 million, caused me to cause the company $2 million. And then I talk about how to actually use this RACI matrix, which is a communication tool to help outline roles and responsibilities, and then some best practices and pitfalls to avoid, and then a couple of examples. So I've added that to this, and then you can still, if you want to get just some blank RACI matrix documents, you can do that. So that's another piece of content that I have added to the accelerator since our last meeting, and I hope that you find those useful. So okay, so let me stop sharing. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about are some are just the questions. So yeah, just go over the questions that I got from you. So a lot of you are having performance review issues with people in your team, and I don't know I don't know if there's something going on this particular time of year, or if it's just a coincidence. But several of you have reached out to me, and we've had some coaching sessions around how do you put together a performance improvement plan? How do you deal with people who aren't actually meeting their objectives, et cetera? So I want to just talk a little bit about, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the mindset around this. So one of the things I'm hearing is you want to get the most out of the people that work for you, and absolutely. And some of you are expressing some disappointment that you're not getting like discretionary time out of your team. And so first of all, what I mean by that, so every job has requirements. There's minimum requirements to do the job, be basically considered a neutral performer, or a good performer, I should say. If you're using some of the different rating systems, you've got underperformers, you've got performers, and then you've got overachieving performers, right? So that's sort of and sometimes you have multiple levels in between, but that's generally where we kind of think of things. And your job description and the communications that you have with your team members should be very clearly articulating what it takes to be a performer. This is your job. I'm paying you to do this job. I'm trying to give you all the tools and resources that you need to do your job. I'm trying to make the environment the most effective and efficient for you to do your job. And I'm paying you to do this job. And so that is kind of where That's sort of the level set, the expectation, the agreement that you have with the people on your team as what their employment is all about. And, you know, obviously these jobs they have varying requirements depending on what it is. So we'll just call that baseline. And many of you are like, gosh, I really wish they were more enthusiastic. I really wish they would, you know, not watch the clock. I really, you know, and worked overtime just on their own or outside of hours. And I really wish they would kind of give this extra effort. And so you're wanting higher performers, right? And of course, we all want that. And most of us are that, right? You don't get to be a leader by just doing the bare minimum. So here you are an overperformer, and you want to have overperformers, you know, working for you. And so the question is like, how do you get that? And so first of all, I think it's really important to understand expectations. So most people are performers. That's sort of the reason why people work, is to do their job, to get their salary. And that is what the majority of people do. And so first of all, I would say you can have an excellent organization with mostly those people. And so I would make sure that you give those people, you know, the accolades, give them the salaries, give them everything they need to continue to do that, because that is really where most people are. You get high performers through a couple of different ways. One, you actually hire them as high performers. So you're interviewing, and you know, job descriptions and your interviewing process needs to be tuned to identify who those people are, because most of those people are sort of naturally that way. And so you should be able to tell through how they're describing and demonstrating their performance in other situations that, okay, this person's going to go the extra mile. They're going to do, you know, assuming that I do my part to give them the resources that they need and the environment they need, it's a high likelihood that they're going to go above and beyond for me too. So one is coming in. Then the second way is really through a shared vision and shared values, not only for the organization as a whole. So obviously, you know, for sure, lots of people want to work for, you know, a company that's innovative, or a company that's focused on the environment, or a company that's focused on workplace happiness or things like that. I mean, there are some values that you and your organization espouse and, you know, and communicate. And lots of times people will want to say, oh, that's an environmentally focused company. I'm an environmentally focused company. We have a shared values here. So that's like, I really am excited to work there. So I'm going to self-select in working there. So you have to decide what your organizational values are, and try to attract people where those match. And oftentimes you can get people to go above and beyond when they get a chance to work in an organization like that. So I've got a barking dog here, so I'm not sure. We might have to kick her out. We'll see what she does. Okay. And then that was the second way. The third way is to really focus on their personal goals and missions. So that is to say, if you brought in somebody and they really, like, they came in as an individual contributor and they really want to be a manager, sometimes you can incentivize this extra performance by saying, oh, I'm going to invest in you. I believe in you. I'm going to give you opportunities to achieve your own personal mission and goals inside my organization. And it'll be a win-win. You're going to work extra hard for me and get closer to your own personal goals. And I'm going to get this great performance out of you. So that's another way that you can get these things. And I think that the thing, though, that a lot of people miss is that the other thing you have to do in order to get extra performance out of people is to not accept people working below the bar, because there's nothing more demotivating than to see people getting paid who aren't in line with culture and values, who aren't performing even at the baseline level, and seeing their leader accept that. And so that I think is probably the hardest thing, and where I'm seeing a lot of those of you that are interacting with me and asking me about this is where I'm seeing a lot of you really struggle, because what you're doing, you're just saying, well, they're pretty good, you know, you're being you're kind of picking and choosing. So you may have somebody who does one or two things really at the higher level, but then does the other 90% below the line. And you keep looking, you're hoping that they'll change into somebody who is all the time overperforming, and instead of addressing the underperformance. And so that's where I think probably your biggest opportunity is to make sure that you are not accepting underperformance in people who either are, you know, kind of above and below, or people that are mostly below, because that really just demotivates people. It sends a signal that you don't actually care, that there's really no reason. There's no benefit to being a high performer. And so why would people go the extra mile for you if you're willing to accept people who don't even do, you know, their bare minimum? So so that's an area that it's hard, but that's an area that you need to address. So now let's talk a little bit about, okay, well, how can you actually address that? And this is where I'm going to bring in something that has been really helpful for me with my sales coach. So this is not about sales, but I think this is an analogous situation, which is to say that it's really hard to have these kind of conversations where it's a boundary situation, right? So in the sales situation, I'm trying to set boundaries around, you know, time that how much time, if any, am I going to give people for free because they really want my help, or because they might turn into clients or whatever. So that's the boundary on the sales side. And that's how Nikki's helping, and that's how we're addressing it. But this performance issue is a boundary too, because you as a leader need to have a boundary about what kind of performance you are willing to accept. How much underperformance are you willing to accept? And so you have to assert that boundary. And the strategy that has been really helpful for me on the sales side, that I think will also be really helpful for you, is to think about what you want to say. Actually think through how you want to have this conversation, how you want to have these communications with people in advance. It is a difficult conversation, and oftentimes we convince ourselves that our boundaries are too rigid, that we're over exaggerating, that it's going to hurt people's feelings, whatever it is. Okay. My apologies. I've got to pause here and address the dog issue. So give me just a second here. All right, sorry about that. You need to think in advance what you're going to say, and even write it out, even practice your delivery so that you feel comfortable actually having the conversation. And it's not only just what you want to say, but it's also the conditions under which you want to say it. So let's take a drink here. I ran up the stairs with the dog and then ran back down. And now I'm like a little out of sorts. So when do you want to have a conversation about there being a performance issue? And I suggest that you just objectively think through, okay, for example, how many times is it okay to be late to your meetings or to your core hours? If you have a lot of you have core work hours that you use, just think about it. How many times is it okay to be late? I don't have the answer. It's your organization, it's your team. You decide. You decide your answer. But just write that down and say, okay, if somebody is late, let's go with, I'll just pick a number 3. Just again, that's not necessarily the right number. The right number is your right number. If it's 0, if you have 0 tolerance, fine. If you say, if it's 5 times, it's 5, whatever. I'm going to say, so if somebody's late 3 times, I'm going to say what? I'm going to say this thing. Hey, you've been late 3 times. This is a problem. This is why it's a problem. Please, is there something I need to be aware of regarding your ability to be here at this time? Is there something I need to be aware of? If they say yes, you say, okay, then you decide if you want to renegotiate around their challenge. Or you decide, if they say no, you say, okay, great. Then my expectation is that you show up. And then just write that out and then say, okay, now, and this is where a lot of you struggle. What's the next step in the escalation of this situation? So if they're late beyond those 3 times and you've had that conversation, what do you want to do next? Just again, offline, not while you're in the moment, just offline, just think about, okay, if they do it next, then if they do it 3 more times, again, I'm just making these things up just to be illustrative, then I want to put them on a performance route. I want to communicate with them that this is really not working, and I want to put them on a performance improvement plan. Okay, great. Now, if the performance improvement plan doesn't work, then what are you going to do? And again, this is where people are not thinking through the next step in their escalation path. If the performance improvement plan doesn't work, then I want to, terminate this person. Okay. What are you going to say to communicate that termination? And then you can have your script for that. So if you think through all of those things and actually have a process in place, you're going to be much better off in one, having clarity on what's actually going on. Because sometimes in the heat of the moment, if somebody was late once, you might think, oh, they're always late. Well, actually, maybe it was only one time. Maybe it's like only one time in the last 9 months they were late. Or maybe, gosh, they're late every single time. And and the rest of your team are just sitting there kind of like, yeah, okay, well, I guess this meeting actually isn't really all that important. I wonder if I need to be there. Because this person's always late. So, but if you have sort of your plan, your boundaries, that's what this plan is. This is what your boundaries are. And, if you're inside a big organization, then maybe there's already these rules in place and you just need to talk to your boss and say, hey, what are the ground rules around, around some performance issues? Is this, and what is a communication plan? Some organizations already have these things in place, but if you're an entrepreneur or you're working in a small organization, they probably don't, in which case you need to set them yourself. And if you're if you're the boss of a startup, which is where most of you that are asking me these questions are, you decide what you're doing. You list out your boundaries, you decide your communication path, you keep track of what's going on, and then you execute your plan. And of course, we all hope that the performance improves in the performance improvement plan. And I can tell you, I've had a lot of success with coaching people through performance improvement plans. not as a coach, not as a private coach. I don't actually take people who are on performance improvement plans because they don't actually want to be coached. They sort of like, oh, they're just doing this because they want to get rid of me. So I don't, but when I was in an organization, when I was a leader and I had to put people in my own organization on performance improvement plans because they weren't meeting expectations, I have had more success than not getting those people to meet expectations. So that's the other thing I want to say about doing this and why I think it's so important to communicate to understand your boundaries sort of objectively and just sort of offline and write them down, is because oftentimes what will end up happening is that you wait and you wait and you wait and you continue to not articulate your boundaries very well, not reinforce your own boundaries, and you end up getting so angry at the other person, but also at yourself for allowing this to happen, that now the person actually has no chance of recovering because you already decided. Now you're just sort of like, how do I get rid of this person? Like, you bottled it all up for however many weeks, months, that now it's almost too late for that person. It's too late for you to see that person as somebody who can actually meet your expectations because you didn't reinforce and actually respect your own boundaries. And now you've made it impossible for that other person for you to ever think that other person can respect your own boundaries. And that honestly is bad leadership, in my opinion, to not articulate what the expectations are in a clear way to the other person and give them opportunities to adjust to the best of their ability. That is what leaders are supposed to do. And so if you avoid it because it's a hard conversation, or avoid it because you don't respect your own boundaries, which is your issue, then you're really not giving people the opportunity to meet expectations. And by the way, your top performers, they will see that too. So in addition to being like, gosh, maybe this meeting's not important, or, why should I bother? They'll also be like, I'm not sure I want to work for this person who allows this stuff to happen. So you end up with retention issues eventually by not actually addressing the people who are underperforming. So that's just what I wanted to share about underperformance in general. So first of all, make sure that you're recognizing that people that are doing the I shouldn't say bare minimum, but like doing what's required of them and nothing more, those people are not underperforming. Those people are doing what you're paying them to do. Okay. You have to do more. You have to set up a better environment, and you have to really try to identify people who self-select into being top performers. You've got to pick them. You've got to nurture them if that's really what you want. And a big part of getting people to do that is to not accept the underperformance. And you really need to address that systematically through clearly articulating your own boundaries. Then you're in your own mind first. What are my boundaries, and what am I going to do if those boundaries are not respected? And then having the conversations with other people about what those boundaries are and what the consequences are for not respecting those boundaries. And not only just the first time, but the escalation path, and then following through on that. But also, as I said, if people fix it, then it's done, and now they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Don't like hold on to these things because people were not respecting boundaries in the beginning. If you didn't clearly articulate them, that's your problem. That's not their problem. So, okay, next, that was a lot, I know. Okay, so the next thing is, how can I improve my strategic thinking? It says I'm highly technical and I've been asked to be more of a strategic thinker. So I really like this question because the reason I like this question is because I actually think it's a hidden strength in a lot of in technical people. And so once you understand this tactic, you're like, oh, I actually am a strategic thinker. So, and I'll give you a little bit more detail about the situation this particular person was in, so you can make it a little bit more concrete. So it was somebody that I'm coaching through the business school at UT, and he had this specific question. And so then we go, it was something we talked about. We looked at all of his assessments, and yes, he was getting that feedback, and he thought it himself, got to be a better strategic thinker. So, okay. And then we go to working on the goals for the year, and he showed, one of the goals, and he had this really excellent detailed plan for one of the goals. And I was like, okay. And there was a lot of jargon in his particular area of expertise. So we're just talking through. He's like, let me explain this to you in greater detail. So he's explaining this like detailed action plan, this month we're going to do this month we're going to do that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, okay, like, why are we doing these things? Like, what do you get? What do you achieve by doing this plan? And he's like, well, right now my team, this is going to build a new capability in my team. It's like, okay, what do you all get to, what is having this new capability allow you to do? And he's like, oh, okay, well, then we will become the provider of choice in this particular type of project management. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what will that get you if you're the provider of choice? And he's like, well, actually right now, like, people don't pick us because not only do we not have this area of expertise, but we also we're not great at customer service. And so what I want to do is build this expertise and improve our customer service. And I was like, okay. And so I said, so what you just told me, that you want to transform your team from being third choice in project management in this organization and having low customer service scores, that you want to transform your team from that to building a new technical capability and boosting the customer service to become the provider of choice for these types of projects, and building capability to do new types of projects is a strategy. This is your strategy. And he was like, yeah, I guess you're right. I never thought about it. It's like the problem isn't that you don't know how to think about strategy. The problem is that you thought about it so quickly that you blew past it and went immediately to the plan. And then when you talk to your leadership, you show them this detailed week by week plan, and they're just like, oh, this person's too tactical. It's not that you're too tactical. It's that you didn't show your work. And if you were to back up and talk about what is it that you want to achieve, and I would add the other question, what is it that you want to avoid? That those are the kind of ways to be framing the strategy. And so whatever initiative it is that you're working on, whatever plans you're putting in place, just because it's kind of your normal thought process. So you may not necessarily think to do that on the front end. And oftentimes people, we're like, if somebody were to say, okay, what is it that you really want to achieve? You may not necessarily think about things in those terms, but wherever you are in your project planning, if you were to just sort of start to ask those questions, well, what is it? What are the outcomes that we really want? Not only just the technical outcome, but like what will getting this technical outcome, what will this allow us to achieve as a team or as an organization, or allow us to avoid as a team, as an organization? If you were to think through those, which are really the whys behind it, if you think through those and can kind of articulate those, that's where the strategic thinking is happening. It's already happening. You already sort of did it. We just need to articulate it. And that's actually what you lead with as well. So when you're talking to higher level executives, I would also argue when you're even talking to your team, if you want to talk about strategy and vision to your team, you start with those couple of statements. So, hey, I really want us to become the project management team of choice in a new area of, and I don't remember what he said, but I'm just going to use artificial intelligence because everybody wants that. So I don't know if that's actually what he said, but I want us to become the project manager provider of choice in this organization in the areas of artificial intelligence. And I want us to transform from the last selected project management team to the first selected project management team because our customer service is so good. That is the strategy in my vision for this team. And then here's how we're going to do it. And then you've got your plan down to the, month, week, 30-minute increments, whatever it is you did. And so I just want to share that with you because we get that a lot. Technical folks like us get that a lot. And that is because we show the details and we care about the details. That's how we think. We think about the details. And the problem is that the people who are seeing that who don't understand the details or don't care about the details because of their role, when you do that, it leads them to make the assumption that you don't know the strategy, that you don't know how to think about the strategy, that you don't know how to articulate the strategy. And I guess my hypothesis is that you do understand how to think through the strategy. It's just that you blew past it. You did it, but you blew past it because in your world, it's how you're going to execute it at the detailed level that you care about. And so just slowing yourself down or pausing and then thinking about and summarizing, okay, what is it that we're really trying to achieve? What's it going to allow my team, my organization to achieve or avoid? That's where your strategic thinking and your strategy statements can come from. And you bring those to the front of your conversation when you're talking with both your team, as you talk to them about why it is that you're doing these things, but also leadership as well. And that you really like the detailed conversations and just kind of jumping into details. That's really for kind of peer-to-peer conversations. Or, talking about the team, but more in like project review meetings and not necessarily like your town halls and things like that, where you definitely want to make sure you articulate what are we trying to achieve and what are we trying to avoid as well. So that is the strategic thinking. Okay, next question. I am having challenges with my co-founder, not doing what they said they're going to do. And so how do I navigate that situation? So this is actually another boundary question. It's just disguised in another it's disguised in another in another way, but it's really the same thing. So obviously the difference is if you're co-founders, you are peers. So this is not like somebody from my team is underperforming. That's not the same. It's not exactly the same. It is now you have a peer. You have a peer who is not following through on their commitments. And so you really, though, need to do some of the same things, which is to say you really need to understand what are your boundaries? What is it that you are willing to tolerate and accept? And what are you going to do if the situation doesn't resolve itself? Because at the end of the day, you can exit, you can leave this organization if you feel like you really need to. And I think you need to decide, okay, is this just sort of an annoying thing? And we just need to renegotiate what these boundaries are, what the workload is. And I'll just live with it, which is a perfectly acceptable answer. Lots of people, end up taking on work maybe that they didn't want to, and maybe you guys can just, rediscuss and change the distribution of workload. Maybe it's a seasonal thing. And by seasonal, I don't mean winter, spring, summer, fall, but maybe there's, this person's in a season of not being able to contribute exactly the way that you had originally envisioned. And so maybe they can contribute in a different way. I mean, so you can have those conversations, but it's really important for you to understand what your boundaries are and what is it that you are going to do if your boundaries are not respected. Because at the end of the day, as much conversation as you want to have, as much negotiation that you want to have, you do not have control over that other person. The only thing you have control over is yourself. And so what are you going to do if for example, your co-founder has decided that they actually are not going to contribute any work at all, and they just want, the name, want their name on it and all of that kind of stuff. What are you actually going to do? Because if you don't actually execute on your boundaries, then you're just going to keep staying in the same place. So I think that really having that, going through that thought exercise can be really empowering, because you'll start to think about probably things that are much less severe than dissolving the partnership. There's probably lots of things along the way that you can't think about right now because you're focused solely on changing the other person's behavior, and being right. And that is not going to get you anywhere, actually. What will get you somewhere is actually changing your own behavior in a way that's in alignment with your values and your boundaries. And so think through that, focus on that. And then I would recommend the same thing. Think about like an escalation path. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is this thing. And if that doesn't put me in a place where I'm more in alignment with my boundaries, then I'm going to do this next thing. And then there's probably, there could be 200 steps between where you are right now and exiting the organization. And so, but thinking through that, I think will set you on a course that will actually move you out of this being stuck, than where you are now, which is focusing on how do I change this other person. So again, it's a boundary situation. And I recommend that you address it really in kind of the same steps as what I talked about earlier with people that are, with somebody who's underperforming, is to think through what your boundaries are, what your escalation path is, start moving in that direction. And then, you monitor and adjust as the other person, their behavior changes or your situation changes, or, you have new opportunities to maybe bring other people on board to help with the work, whatever those things may be. I can't foresee them right now, but I can tell you that you will stay stuck if all of your energy is focused on changing this other person's behavior rather than focusing on what you can control, which is your own behavior. So get clear on what it is you want and start moving in that direction. Okay. Last question. I'm starting a new technology project and I'm having trouble finding industry contacts to do some kind of customer discovery interviews. So the first thing I would tell you is that it's always easiest to start with your own personal local network. So start with the people that you already know, let them know what you're working on, and see if they have anybody in their network who can somehow make an introduction for you. And the reason I say that is because warm introductions, so somebody who knows you says, hey, I know this person and they're looking for help with this, a warm introduction has a much higher rate of conversion. And by rate of conversion, I mean getting an answer, getting a response, has a substantially higher conversion rate than cold outreach, which is to say, just going on the internet and finding someone's email and sending them a message. That does work. I mean, the conversion rate on cold outreach is not 0, but it's like 1/10 what it is for warm outreach. And so the first thing to do is to really literally start with the people that you already know. I mean, open up your phone or open up your email and like, okay, who do I know who I could just mention this to and see if they know somebody. The other thing when you're doing this is be as specific as you possibly can about what you're looking for. So I'm working on this technology, it is in this industry, and I'm interested in talking to somebody in this kind of role. The more specific you can be, the easier it is for your contacts to do pattern recognition and to potentially identify somebody. So I would start that literally with people you know. And then the second place I'd go maybe immediately after that or in combination is to organizations, actual organizations that are designed to help you find networking partners for free. So let's start with the free ones first, okay? Because I tell you, if you get on LinkedIn and you sort of put a call out, or there are services or people who get paid to help make contacts, and you don't need to do that right now. What you need to do is focus on the free stuff first. And so, if you're at a university or if you're near a local university, and don't forget your own, like if you graduated years ago, your own alumni association. So universities are a great place to start with where you went to school, if there's any potential connections there. And then if you're in a university, I would start there, but same thing, talking to people, maybe at the departments associated with those and saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. Can you help me identify some contacts? The other free places that are designed to help you make connections are Chamber of Commerce and entrepreneur centers. So I would, oftentimes you can just walk into those places, but call or walk in or do a contact and say, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm interested in developing a technology, and this is what it's about. And can you help me get plugged in to the potential network where I can identify some contacts to do some customer discovery on these topics. So then the last, and this is closer to cold, so this is going to be closer to cold outreach, but it's still, I think, a useful one. And this is actually the one that I personally use in my own business, is LinkedIn groups. So LinkedIn groups, I would call those maybe like lukewarm to tepid. So they're obviously not as warm as people who already know you, or even organizations that are created and designed and paying people to help make connections like the ones I just mentioned. But LinkedIn groups, is still free. So what you can do is you can get on LinkedIn, just type in some keywords that are associated with the target people that you're trying to reach. So whatever industry they're in, or maybe they use specific materials, or whatever it is. I would type that into LinkedIn and then search on groups. It's across the top, click groups and see if there are any groups that match with your topic. And then just request to join. Once you join those groups, most of group, I would say 95% of LinkedIn groups right now are really unmoderated. So you request to join and you're automatically joined. The other maybe 5, maybe 10% are moderated. But you typically get in within 5 to 10 days. And then there's very, very, very small number that are really closed groups. But so obviously you wouldn't worry about those. But once you join the group, then you can start to search. There's its own search bar. You can use a search bar to try to find people that might have like the job that, the role that you think would be the type of person you want to talk with, or might be in the organization, the company that you might want to talk with. And then the nice part about LinkedIn groups is that you do not have to pay or use any credits of your LinkedIn credits to communicate, to send messages to those people if you're in the same group. And you have a built-in sort of introduction. You say, hey, we're both in the LinkedIn group, whatever. I'm reaching out because whatever. Do you have a recommendation, or would you be willing to talk with me for 15 minutes, or whatever it is that you hope to accomplish with your customer discovery? Once the LinkedIn groups. One is help you down select a little bit because there's like 1 billion people on LinkedIn. So they're like, but there's only 200,000 people in this group. Then you've already done some down selection and now you have a free way to communicate with them. And so I actually have numbers on this. So I have about a 7% conversion rate of LinkedIn. So people on LinkedIn, then connecting with them on groups, and then of the people that connect with me, actually getting them to like take a second level of communication with me. And in my case, I'm trying to get people to sign up for my email list, sign up for my newsletter. So that's very specific. So you could probably have even higher conversion rate if you're not trying to get anybody to sign up for anything, or I'm not obviously trying to sell something to them. So anyway, so that's how you do it. So do that first. That's probably going to get you a lot, a nice first round of contacts. Is probably going to take you months and months and months to actually follow up with and have conversations and build rapport with all the people that are going to come just from doing those couple of things. But again, the order is what's really important. The order is people I know that are in my contact list right now, and just letting them know what I'm up to and whether or not they have a contact. Then go with organizations that for free, because they're nonprofits and they're designed this way, will help you make contacts. Entrepreneur centers, universities, chambers of commerce. Then you can check LinkedIn groups in particular, free way to do sort of cold outreach. And then, and honestly, I don't think you will ever get here. There are some services that can help you kind of make contacts, but I would honestly would not recommend those anytime in the near, I wouldn't recommend those. Probably more likely to maybe go to conferences or things like that before you would hire any kind of service to help you make contacts with people. So that's my recommendation for networking. Okay, so that is it for this week. Let me just double check. I usually write down the date of the next one, but I forgot to do that. Okay, so our next one is Wednesday, April 17th. So I will see you then. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.